Oh, hey everybody! Welcome to my beautiful home. I've just moved to this lovely new house and got my baby grand piano back there. This is like the StreamYard new virtual background feature, so you can look like you're more baller than you actually are. Mm. So I'm just gonna leave it up for a while and see who notices. Kind of fun. I'm actually not at the studio. I'm at home. I'm got a dual vet visit today for 2 cats, and I'm waiting to go pick up the cats. So doing the stream while I'm doing that. So I couldn't go all the way to my studio from my home. Had to do it at home, and I thought, why not enhance my home to something that's even more extravagant. So what's going on? Let's see who's here. We got Dan, we got Todd Roy, we got Peter. We got my knees hurt. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late too, you guys. I was getting my coffee. Place called Rosebud Coffee in Pasadena that's kind of over by PCC, if anybody ever is around these parts. Super solid, really good. Never been there. And I hit it up today after the vet. Let's see, what are you guys talking about? Ray says, have you guys seen Bonamassa 51 Esquire? Trading him 4 tires and a spare for it. He was up playing through an old, or he was yesterday posted something up playing through an old 73 Marshall lead and bass combo. It sounded great. I thought it was really cool. I don't know much about those amps, so it was educational. One thing about Joe is he's a good curator, educator, you know? Keeps us all informed as to what's cool when it comes to vintage stuff. E-Bars says, theory does not need to be complex to be useful. The basic stuff goes a long way. Totally agree. I've only got a basic theoretical knowledge, to be honest. And I feel like, you know, it's definitely helped me with, you know, like, because I never got that deep. I just did the basic, like, MI theory course. And, you know, I understand modes and I understand... I mean, if I'm playing a chord, I can figure out what it is. If I don't know what it is, that kind of thing. So it's good. So, all right, I'm going to get rid of the virtual background. None. There we go. There's my house. It's also nice. It's nice in here. I like my place. All right. Let's see. Been trying to fix the reverb on a 95 Fender Blues Junior all day. Reverb problems can be confounding sometimes. I've had issues before. I divided by 13 FTR 37 that had a tank that would just hum, like it would feed back is what it would do, like a low would come through. Then it was the reverb tank, like kind of like vibrating or something, and it just, as you turned up the volume, it would do that and just get weird. So, and I could kind of never get rid of it. I remember that. I still have that amp though. It's a great sounding amp. Anybody ever play one of those? FTR 37. It was like a double power deluxe reverb is what it reminded me of. And I love a deluxe. So I should use that amp more. I should actually hook it up and have it in the studio for videos and stuff, because it does sound really great for big American clean stuff. And then when driven, it sounds really cool. As you start to turn it up, it's got the pull mid boost on the, it's just a volume, a tone, a volume, a treble and bass. And then the volume has a pull boost that kind of kicks the mids and it sounds really good. I used that. It was such a simple amp and I used it on the road for a few years. Remember I used it with Jewel. I used it for a little bit with Chris Cornell. I'd kind of gone on to the AC30 style one by then, which was also really nice. The RSA 31. Still have that too. I got a number of amps that I should really just get in and try them out again, plug them in and use them, because I haven't used them for a number of years. But yeah, maybe I should do a video on all the amps I have that you've never seen in YouTube videos, because I don't really think I was using, by the time I was doing YouTube, I wasn't really using the divided bys that much anymore. Not because they're not good, I just had moved on to different things. But you know, you go back and you revisit things that you used to use and check them out, and they're great amps. I mean, I have the EL84 one, and then I have the FTR, which was a 4.6v6 kind of jobby. Like I say, it sounded like a big deluxe to me, big deluxe reverb, like a 60s deluxe reverb. And then I have like a THD Flexi 50. There's something you've never seen. Still have it. Was a good sounding amp, you know, in kind of a Marshall-y way. It had a cool tone. One channel amp, but had a boost, like an overdrive circuit in it. Kind of neat. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. My question last week that got cut off was, this is from Todd Roy, where would you put your Space Echo RE202? I have had to put mine in the effects loop. Well, it'll work great in a loop, but you could also use it in front and it'll work great. I mean, most people, when the effects loops weren't even really a thing when the original Space Echo came out, and it's designed to sound like an original Space Echo. So, you know, you can easily run it in front of an AC30 or in front of a Fender or in front of, you know, any kind of amp like that. It'll sound, you know, really cool and vibey and do a thing. I mean, one of the greatest guitar sounds of Brian Setzer, you know, runs them in front of the Brown Fender Showmans, I think, right? And, you know, Space Echo into that, and that's his whole tone, and it's super cool. And they kind of preamp the amp a little bit and do a cool thing, you know, without even adding any of the stuff that the, you know, the echo or reverb or whatever. But whatever sounds good. I mean, you can run them in a loop. You know, it's up to you, honestly. Sometimes, like, if I have the option, I like to have something like a Space Echo or Echoplex in front of the amp and then digital delay in the loop, you know? Like it's kind of weird, sort of just maybe from it's not weird, but like from a traditionalist sort of perspective, running an analog delay in an effect loop is kind of like not something that a lot of people ever did to achieve great guitar sounds. I don't know. Analog delay was more that dark thing that hits the front of a clean to semi-broken up amp and adds a vibe, you know? Digital delay in front of an amp can be in front of an amp that's at all dirty, can be a little strident and hard to mix and stuff like that. And that's just because the digital signal is so, you know, it's reproducing the whole guitar sound. Whereas an analog chip is like, there ain't nothing going on. Like, you know, just think of a carbon copy or something. There ain't nothing going on above like 2K or something like that. They just lop off all the top end, those Bucket Brigade chips. So they can work great in front of an amp that's crunching up a little bit because of the dark sound of the delay, and it doesn't clutter. It's actually kind of a feature, even though it's sort of a, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? It's, I don't know. I'm still waking up. It's not a detriment or what's the word I'm looking for? What's a good word in the English language to describe it? It's a feature, not a. After a high school education, and it's showing. But you know what I mean. So I guess, yeah, for me, it's sort of digital delay in the loop, and then, you know, tape echo or analog delay in front. Space Echo is its own. They've got tape delay. Just a little bit more on the subject. Tape delay, generally speaking, has more top end than analog for sure, and is a lot closer to digital delay than it is to analog to me. Like a tape delay actually just sounds like a tape, like a cassette tape or something, you know. It's like kind of crappy reproduction, but it works that well. And it's like, you know, it's not like the fidelity is, as long as the tape is relatively fresh and the heads are, you know, it's maintained and stuff like that. The heads are clean and stuff. The fidelity is actually pretty good on an echo, like an Echoplex or something. So, but there's something about an Echoplex, the vibe where, you know, it's got enough vibe where you can run it in front and it sounds like really cool. Digital delay in front, to me, always sounds a little, I don't know, just not what I want a digital delay. It's just kind of there, you know. And then in a loop, it works great because then you can mix it. You know, it's a much more subtle thing with long tails and longer echoes, longer delays and stuff. It's just like different delay, different use of delay, and for different purposes, you know. So, yeah, I don't know. Whole diatribe about delay there. Oh, okay. I'm going to try and not be so far behind in the stream. Last week, of course, I had the debacle where I cut off my own microphone. I edited the video so that part was all cut out, but that was so dumb. So this week I'll try and keep somewhere down towards the bottom of the chat so that if there's a problem, I see it. What's a good substitute for R121? So yeah, that was probably one of those questions I was answering last week where I was muted. VR1 from SE is a nice one. There's a Shure mic that's really nice, the one that you see on Slash's cabs all the time. It's got a red front on it. I can't remember what the heck it's called, but I've tried it. It sounds really good. I tried it. I believe we used that one in my mic shootout that's up on the Guitar Center. Not Guitar Center. Oops, Sweetwater. Faux pas. Sweetwater video that I did. Nothing against either of them, but you're not supposed to mix those two up. It's like worlds collide. Anyway, I made a video about microphones, guitar cabinet microphones. That actually turned out really good, I think, when I was at Sweetwater. And we used the Shure in that if you want to listen to that. It's not an inexpensive mic. It's $700, $800, $900, something like that. So it's right up around the price of a 121, which is, I think, just over $1,000. Great one, though, on a budget, ST170 from Sterling, which is the Guitar Center brand of their kind of like brand of microphones and headphones and stuff. ST170 is an active ribbon that I got a long time ago. So it's got a preamp in it. So it's more akin to maybe an R122, which is the first ribbon mic I tried where I felt like, oh, this has nice extended top end on it. You could actually use this like solo without any 57 or anything blended in. And the guitar tone would be pretty cool and clear and everything. Because the 121 is great on mellow cleans and nice, like very natural sounding, the amp in the room kind of sounds. If you're doing a solo guitar clean thing, just beautiful. I mean, it sounds perfect for that stuff. But if you're doing anything heavy or distorted or any kind of, you want to rock a little bit, a 121 to me on its own is always too dark. You got to blend it. It's great, but you got to blend it with a 57 or something that's got a bit more punch and upper cut, a little faster and, so the 170 that I was mentioning, ST170, that's the Sterling mic, is a couple $100, and it's kind of more akin to a 122, and it's like a budget version of that, basically. But I really like it. Really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, so I still have it, and we'll use it sometimes. I've just been so happy with what I've been using, which is the Soyuz condenser microphone mixed with a 57. And sometimes I can use one or the other just by themselves. And that Soyuz on its own is, man, it's a good, really good sounding condenser microphone on a guitar cab. Super good. So, yeah. Anyways, sent you a video link to the Chris Cornell gig like 2 weeks ago. What a show. Oh, yeah. That's the gig. You're talking about the Pink Pop show, right? 2009 in the Netherlands. Yeah, that was a fun one. That was kind of towards the end of our band. Like that would be the last summer where we were really together and touring a lot and stuff like that before he kind of went out and did the songbook tour after that, and then reformed Soundgarden in 2012 or so and did King Animal in 2013. So yeah, 2009 was kind of where we were. We were a real band by that point, playing like a band and fighting like a band and hanging like a band and the whole 9 yards. So thanks though for mentioning that. Silver Beetle, has anyone experienced ground loop hum when reamping? Did a minimum setup and still had it. You just need to get something to break the ground. As you're reamping, it's probably coming from your interface to the front of the amp is where I would try an isolation transformer. Samson makes one. Just look up Samson isolation transformer, and you'll find this little black box that's got a switch on it that says lift. And it's a great little, it works every bit as good as my, like I've got an EBTech hum eliminator that's a 2-channel one. That's great too. The EBTech one's just fine. Or the Palmer, Palmer isolation transformer. It's just a 1/4 inch in, 1/4 inch out, and you patch it on the way to things to bust that ground loop. But the little Samson one, I'm just recommending it because it's cheap. It's like $35, I think, and you can get it at Center. I think Sweetwater probably sells it and stuff. It's easy to find it on Amazon, and it's great to have around, man, in your studio or just in your gig bag, and it's amazing the amount of problems I've solved, just having one of those around, hooking up things in a certain way, and I've got a ground loop, and it's like, all right, well, let's try and bust the ground on this connection, and there it goes away. So it's always good to have those in your kit. Yeah. What made your Ibanez Explorer so great, like Eddie's guitar? What makes it great? I mean, they're just really good sounding guitars, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the wood. It's that sort of Japanese ash. It's called sen, and it's a unique wood, I guess, and it's an ash body Explorer, basically. The pickups in mine sound really great. They're the guy that used to own it is the owner of TV Jones. So this is like many years, like 20 years before I got it. The guy that runs TV Jones, the pickups that mainly they make, like the Gretsch style, pickups like Filtertrons and stuff. But TV Jones does have one set. I looked on their website when I got the guitar, of a PAF style humbucker, a low wind, 8 whatever K humbucker. They have one set. I'm assuming that's what's in there. And he's a little elusive about what the magnets are and stuff and what it is. But man, those pickups sound really good. Like it's got a set of these TV Jones humbuckers in it that are the only set that he makes that's not a Filtertron style pickup. Because he used to own the guitar. Now, sometimes in the early 2000s, he sold the guitar to the guy that I bought it from, who was kind of a collector that he sells records and rock memorabilia and sometimes guitars and things. So that's the dude that I bought it from. During COVID, I went and met him in a parking lot in Huntington Beach. And he opened up the case, and I was like, oh, look at that thing. And I picked it up, and it was light, and I could tell the neck was magic feeling. I was like, this is great. All day long. Thank you very much. And I drove back and was, been stoked with that purchase ever since. Just a great, great guitar. The fella from TV Jones then contacted me and said, oh, you got that guitar. I love that guitar. If you ever want to get rid of it, contact me. So anyways, it's just a good one. And it's really resonant. It's really full sounding and clear, and yet it's chunky. Like when you play, that I used it a little bit in the video, right, that I did for the Van Halen pickup stuff, and I had the super distortion in it for a minute, and that tone, man, I mean, I don't know, that sounds like that sound to me. Part the guitar and part the pickup, because you heard the guitar with a few different pickups in it, I think, in the video, didn't you? I think I played it with the PAF style ones, and then the super distortion, that big fat full bass. I mean, I'm convinced that sound on Van Halen 1, that big fat full crunchy distortion thing, is partially that super distortion, but also partially being in a what we consider Gibson short scale guitar that's got a set neck and all that, and has a certain kind of sound. Like I always say, when we're talking about Van Halen, at least the first few records, we're not talking about one guitar, we're talking about two, really. And who knows what else, maybe there's others in there that he used, but the Jamie's Crying and You Really Got Me and stuff, that's a different instrument, and it's such a good sounding guitar. So, and also Ace Frehley used one. He was the other user. So of those. So okay, moving down in the chat here, we got 281 people online. Nice to have you here. For those just joining, I'm at home because I'm had a vet appointment this morning. 2 cats, dealing with just getting them checked out for I won't go into detail because it's gross, but one of them kind of had the runs, and trying to get to the bottom of that and not have them, just trying to make them thrive, those kitties. So I'm just waiting to go pick them up from the vet and doing the live stream in the meantime. So I couldn't go to the studio. So bear with me here. I'm home today, caring for the animals. Henrik says, love your channel. Thank you. Thanks for all you do for the community. Thank you. Appreciate it. For 2025 and a chance of Tonex captures like you did for Quad Cortex. There's stuff that we're talking about. I'm talking about stuff with IK a little bit. So yeah. Yep. It's all happening. Do the mystery amp demo. What's that? Which mystery amp? There's one. I have 2 amp demos to do this week, guys. I've got so much going on right now. I'm like losing my mind. I'm actually like anxiety ridden about the amount of stuff I got to do. But it's quality problems. I've got good work to do, and I'm stoked. But anyways, oh, I just realized I got something here I could show you. Maybe I'll do that in a little bit. A little show and tell. But yeah. You're an inspiration to us all. Hey, thanks. Appreciate that. From Fan of the Wild. 2 super chats there. I'm going to grab those in just 2 seconds. Speaking of amps you used to use, I'm so glad you got the Top Hat back. Great amp. The maker's a wealth of knowledge. I agree. He taught me a lot about tube amps back in the late 90s when I first started getting into really understanding gear a little bit better. I mean, I always was a gear nerd, 80s and everything growing up, but I didn't understand, like you couldn't have asked me back in 98, like the difference between a Svetlana EL34 and an old Mullard or something, or something. I wouldn't have known, and he kind of taught me some good basics about amps back in the day. And he's a good guy. Brian Gerhardt, great guy. I had a Flexi 50, wish I never sold it. Yeah, I agree. That's from WW Land. Sometimes I try and not just say things and then move on, because if anybody's watching this in the car or something, like podcast style, they won't know what I'm talking about. Did you change amp with Henley after he made the comment? Are you talking about when he said, you got any Fender amps to me? That I didn't actually get the gig then. That was the first audition I did for Dawn was in 2000. And they picked Peter Stroud for that tour. Actually, I was the runner-up. And then 2009 is when I got the gig. So, and by then I had the PT100. So I had my own amp. Yeah. Anyway, it was funny. He was just joking around. Sonic Blue 1922 got my Soldano X88IR. Wow, I am impressed. I agree. It's a really, really good product. I think it's really cool. Metal Militia says, have you tried any post-2018 Gibson Historics? And how have they improved, if they are? I think they kept kind of getting closer and closer, like post 2013 or 14 or so. I mean, I remember them. One thing was they seemed to really get the greening of the gold top right, or the green in the gold top. You know what I mean? How the gold is like because I had a 2003 gold top that was a great guitar, but it never looked quite right to me. The gold on it was not, just didn't look like an old one. I had an old one, so I knew what that looked like, and they just always it just looked off. It looked too gold and not gold green enough, to me. So I think they really started nailing that in the 2013, 14 period. And then, post that, I mean, I've tried a few, I think I get a little turned off by the excessive price, when you see like the Murphy Lab, this and that, and they're like 10 grand. And it's like, is that really any better than the $6,000 VOS or whatever they call them, R9? I don't even know what they call them anymore. True Historic, the different, and I think it just comes down to, I would never spend that on one. Like I would never spend 10 grand, but I did spend like 6. I have a 2009 R9, and it was like with tax, I think it came to 6 or something back in the day. And I still have that guitar. It's a good guitar. I would like to maybe investigate finding one that's, it's a beautiful one, man. I mean, the top on it's a 50th anniversary. I feel like that should count for something. I have the certificate for it and everything. But I would, try and get into maybe my trading it for like the best one I could find, from 2017 or 18 or something. And I would say, if anything, the one thing I noticed is maybe later the necks got a little closer, like the ones I would pick up in Japan occasionally and stuff. It seemed like they got a little closer, like the V thing, the subtle V of the neck, a little less shoulder, occasionally you'd see that. So, and I'm a little biased because most of them that I would see is in guitar stores in Japan, because I go out to guitar stores when I'm there and stuff. And those Japanese stores, many times the specs are a little different than the ones you get in the States. Like they would say, Ishibashi spec, like they went there and picked the wood at the Gibson factory and stuff. And they were able to do that. So, just kind of, it makes me think, are the neck shapes slightly tweaked, and are they? So but I just don't know, not 100% sure. At the end of the day, I think it's finding a guitar that feels great in your hands and seems to be, seems to work for you, and it might be from 2001 or it might be from 2018. You never know. you know, whatever. They've made great guitars. They made good guitars in the 70s. You find good Les Pauls sometimes. There was probably a lot more sort of bad stuff, you know, that would pass muster as being acceptable, and you know, in the Norland era. But it's not like there wasn't some good guitars made then. So it just depends. Yeah. Hey Pete, have you ever jammed with Joe Bonamassa? No, I haven't. I've only actually talked with him over like this sort of thing once. So we've never actually met in person, but you know, occasionally we have some interaction on DM style on the web and stuff like that. And he seems like a really good guy. I would if I was ever going to buy an old guitar or something, I would probably hit him up, and then, you know, like a valuable, you know, something of, he seems like a great resource and very like willing to share what he knows. And you know, I would definitely trust his judgment and opinions on such things. Just watch Rhett's video on getting his new pedal board. Some interesting tips from the builder. Who built it? That's interesting. Was it done in Nashville or something? Yeah, just, I want to get to those super chats. I'm going to do them all, but there's just lots of questions and comments here, so I wanted to get to them. Just got my Barefoot 3s 2 days ago. Bought them thanks to you, and damn, I love them. That's great to hear. I am actually going to take a picture of that and send it to my friend from Barefoot. Just because he'll like to hear that. But hey, I wouldn't. That video created a little bit of controversy. Some of the comments were downright kind of snooty and stuff in it. It was like, oh, is this like a commercial, or is it? Of course, it's a commercial. You know, that's what I do. But I would never have a pair of speakers up. I think I said this last week. I would never have a pair of speakers up as my main set of monitors that I couldn't mix on, that I didn't feel comfortable on. Because how would I work? You know, everything I'd be questioning all along. But I mean, you know, that's kind of what I do. Is talk about gear that I like and stuff. So, but they're rad, man. I mean, aren't they something else? I mean, they're really, really good speakers. So I'm glad that you feel the same way I do. I mean, it was just like clear as a bell what was going on, you know, like really, really good studio monitors. Now, some of the other people were like, oh, like one guy was like crying, laughing face, like puts up footprint 3s instead of MM45s and uses those because the MM45s are like more expensive, right? And it's like, well, yeah, dude, MM45s are midfield monitors, you know, and I don't want to mix on great big midfield monitors all the time. I'll use them as reference, you know. That's what they are. They're midfields, you know. I don't like mixing on midfields. I like mixing on near fields at low volume, fairly close to me, you know. And that's what I've always done, and that's how I feel comfortable. Just like big studio mixers don't mix on the mains in Ocean Way or something. They mix on NS10s, like right here in their face, that are speakers that are like, you know, like 10 times as more, like as cheap, you know. And they mix on those. And then when the client comes in or they want to check a mix loud, they'll hit the mains, and everybody stands back in the room and listens. That's kind of what, you know, midfields aren't exactly that, but I wouldn't use the MM45s too. This is my honest feel. I like the MM45s, and I've had them for years, and I would use them, you know, I would mainly mix on the Adams and then listen to the MM45s for reference, you know, so I'm 90% of the time on the other speakers. And if I can only have one pair of speakers in my studio, it's got to be near field. So yeah, I wouldn't have the MM45s if that was the only thing I could have. I would have the footprints, which are the cheaper speaker. So shoot me. I don't know. I could give you a million examples of, you know, top mixers that would say that too. Like if you had mains or big old midfields or your near fields that you do most of your mixing on, you can only have one set, what would it be? And they're going to friggin' tell you it's the near fields every time. No friggin' way they would go, oh yeah, I could mix on the mains like all the time. Like there's no way. And furthermore, just to add to that, what does everybody listen on these days? Tiny little speakers. People are listening to stuff on their phone, or it's on earbuds, you know, but it's like, you know, a great big amazing sounding tuned, you know, or even a midfield is not like even realistic to what most people are listening to music on these days. So, you know, people listen on iPads and laptops, and like, you know, either that or it's in their car, and you know, the near field's just a better reference for most mixing. That's what I think. What's this? This happens when you use a full-blown recording set to do something as pedestrian as a live stream. Oh, you're saying the problem I had last week. Yeah, I was thinking about that. You're not wrong, the Black Glove. Using a complex, like right now, this just works because I'm using my laptop. It's the internal camera. It's the internal microphone. It works just fine, right? So I was thinking about that last week. Like I've got kind of a maybe too sophisticated setup for doing the live stream if I don't have an engineer, you know? It's like if it's just me sitting there doing it, there's kind of a lot of things that could go wrong with the chain. You're 100% right. When I think about it, if I was to apply that to guitar rigs, you know, if I was doing my own rig and I had no tech, I'm always of the mind of going simpler is better, less gear, less problems, like less places in the chain for things to go wrong. That's been a sort of a, philosophy of mine for a long time. Like how can I use less guitars, less gear, you know, a simple, if there's something wrong, I need to fix it myself. It's like, so yeah, I should be, you know, you're not, I'll take that criticism, and that suggestion is, pretty darn valid. Anyways, Here, using a wet dry, I'm getting to the super chats, I promise. Using a wet dry wet setup, do you recommend 3 amps or 1 amp and a stereo power amp? Generally speaking, it's going to be 1 amp and a stereo power amp. That's the way that, once again, like, there's a lot to go wrong in using 3 amps, wet, dry, wet. Could be really cool. I mean, that's kind of the Brian May things, 3 AC30s with the one in the middle dry and then delays in the outside and stuff. It was the original wet, dry, wet, I think. He might be the first guy because he was doing that way back when. But, yeah, in the 80s, they kind of figured it out. And it was like, yeah, we can do this wet, dry, wet thing, late 80s, whenever the first kind of rigs like that were. And there's different ways to do wet, dry, wet too, like the Studio Landau way and stuff, where you mic the cabinet and then send that to the effects, get a stereo line out of a mixer and send that to, that's a different way to do it, but a bunch of different ways to do this. Kind of the only time I think in recent times I've seen anybody do like 3 amps would be if you're incorporating that EVH delay in the way that they kind of configured it, so that you could use 3 amps with it. Kind of unique, but it works. It's just another way to go at it. But generally speaking, I think we're talking about a head with a tap taken off of the speaker output, sent to some effects, the effects, and maybe a mixer so you can mix in dry signal. And all that goes to a power amp and 2 cabinets, on the outsides for the effects. And that's kind of the common way. If you're using 2 amps guitar amps to do that, just maybe going into the effects returns, let's say, well, you got a lot of things more things that can go wrong, more chance of being out of phase on one side than the other. There's, preamp tubes and different things like, because there's things in those amps that you don't need when you're doing it, right? If you're just using the power sections. So anyway, anyone know when Pete is heading to the UK pretty soon? I go quite soon. So, yeah. Ooh, I'm running a little low on battery. So I'm gonna grab my adapter, which is right here. And then I want to show you guys something really quick. Maybe I'll do that, and I'll do that later. I'll just get my power plugged in here so that we don't go dead on the stream. I thought I had enough when I started doing this, but apparently not. Where is it? There it is. I got a new backpack because my backpack hatched. I had this great backpack, a Samsonite backpack that I loved for years. I bought it when I was at the Guitar Summit show in Germany a few years ago. And it finally, I abused that thing, man. It took it all over the world multiple times. Such a good backpack, but the zipper broke. And they were saying, man, it's going to be like really cost prohibitive to fix this. So I'm using this backpack that I sort of despise at the moment. And thinking about getting a new one, but I'm kind of running out of time to do that before I go away. I've got so much to do. Yeah. Anyways, there's the power plugged in. So I'll do my little show and tell in a little bit here. Here's Steven saying he bought the Samson box. That's the ISO transformer I was recommending if you have problems with ground loops. On my recommendation, it says it works great. Yeah, it's perfect. It's really good. This is another good point. Philip says if you happen to have a radial big shot ABY, you could use the ground lift in that. 100%. They've got a good. The B output has both a phase flip and ground lift on that second output. So even if you only use it for that, which I was actually just doing, I was using all my other ground lift stuff at my studio, and I needed one more for something, and I used the big shot because I have one of those around too. So just hook it up and you plug into the input, and then you take the B output and hit the lift. So you're using it for, you're using a much more capable box for just a ground lift, but it works. Yeah. Getting to those super chats right now. Have you tried a directional patch cable to reduce guitar hum in your studio? I know what you mean. So the ground's cut on one end. Is that what you're recommending for this same thing? I just use the ISO transformers because I think there can be other problems with doing it that other way. Michael there with a super chat. Can a Marshall DSL 100 sound similar to a JCM 800 for 80s rock? I don't know how similar the new JCM 2000s are to the ones that came out like 99 or 2000, whenever that amp first came out. I got one right back then. The clean channel was supposedly kind of JCM 800-ish with the crunch switch in, I think that's right. It seemed to sound pretty darn good, I thought. The drive channel, I think, Friedman does some tweaks to them that he says makes them sound way better. I could believe that. I mean, the drive channel always sounded never quite what I wanted, but not bad. It was usable. It was a good usable rock amp, like totally decent, and yeah, I would think it would be interesting to investigate doing some mods on it and stuff to kind of bring it to, if I had one, I would take it to Dave and say, make it sound like your, JEL or whatever, an amp that I did a video for this past week. But I liked mine. I had one. If you're talking about the original one, I liked it, and I thought it was a good versatile amp. At the time, I was just getting into full swing of like touring with different bands and stuff, and it was an amp that I could easily backline. This is pre everybody going direct and the things that people do now. It was like we were always backlining. Flying in to do a festival somewhere, and you had to backline an amp. Half the time, you'd put a JCM 2000, you'd get a 900 dual reverb or whatever. They were always like, not the best. Also not terrible, though. If you're a decent guitar player, you should be able to make it work. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat, though. That'd be my recommendation. If you got that amp and you want to put a little bit of dough into it and just have it tweaked to sound as good as possible, like some tweaks or whatever, with a Marshall expert like Dave. Son of Pyro, greetings. Really dig the Sunday Lives. Thank you. Here's a bit for the coffee. Cat Toy Fun. Thanks. I've been re-listening to Pete Thorn too. I have Dirty Town on a loop. Killer album. Thanks, man. I'm really proud of the record. I mean, it's time to do another one for sure. But when I go back and I listen to it, I'm like, I'm the main thing. I don't cringe. I have a feeling of pride. I was like, you worked really hard on this, and it sounds good, and you did a good job. And I can't tell you what I'm doing next year yet, but there's some good stuff going on. And part of it was that record. Somebody listened to the record and was like, I listened to your album and blah blah blah. I'll tell you more about that soon, but once I can. But so the record, I highly recommend you guys doing your own records. Like, it's really satisfying, and it really helps you to put your stamp on, this is me. You know what I mean? I don't know. Like, I really settled down a lot more when I did my own music. Like, I settled into myself more, and I got more comfortable playing with other people because I was like, this is me. This is what I do. Here it is. I'm proud of it. Make sure you're proud of it and stuff. And then you put it out there in the world, and then people know what you're about. for better or for worse, you know, because some people will like it and other people might not, right? And I was just really like, it was good for like my soul or something, and just my mental state to put out my 2 records. And it's definitely time to do another one, you know. So yeah. Okay. I heard an old interview with EVH where he said that Women in Love was recorded with a Strat with a Tele bridge pickup in it. Really? Like the tapping part in the beginning? I could believe that. You know, the harmonic tapping part. I doubt the whole song though. Probably just the clean stuff at the beginning. It's a really nice sound, a little bit of echo on it, and you know, he's such a man. What a legend. Not to increase your video anxieties, but what was a little purple Friedman head at your studio? Oh, that is a head that Dave just lent me to use as the other half of stereo. So I didn't have, you know, I could have come up with an amp of my own, I guess, but I just needed something that was easy, and I was in his shop, and I needed something to just be an effect return. So tube power amp, basically. So I was using it for that, to just do some, when I get sounds dialed in for tour, I have my main head in there, and then I have another head, and I just have a couple 112s, and I dial everything in on the 112s. And I just didn't have another amp that was convenient. I have another PT100 in there, but I've got it in the rack, and it's dedicated to making videos and stuff like that. So I need it to not have the effect return plugged in and second half stereo and all that stuff. So blah, blah. So Dave's, it's not an amp that it's kind of a shop amp of his that is that he just keeps around to use for things like what I was using it for. So it's a little like kind of, it's modified basically with a power amp return and a volume for the like a return volume, so you can dial it in. A long time listener, first time caller, says Al. What's up? Hoping to catch you with the tour in Aberdeen in the new year. Be happy to introduce you to our local indie guitar maker. Please come on out and say hi. I'll be there. We're going to play some fun rock songs. Good times. I appreciate the super chat, and I'm looking forward to Scotland. Being runner-up once to Peter Stroud, no shame in that. He's a great player and seemingly cool dude. Peter's the sweetest dude, great guitar player, and I did eventually get it. And Peter, I would have picked him too. You know, there's no doubt in my mind. The first time I auditioned for Don's band, I was 28 and way greener than him. I'd done some touring, you know, and I, you know, put out a record with a band and done some stuff. But Peter was like already playing with Sheryl Crow, and I think, and was. Had, you know, he's got 10 years on me and stuff like that, and just has more, you know, he was the right guy. Absolutely. You know, no doubt about it. On a high profile gig like that. I was a little young, you know, 28. Nowadays, you know, I feel like kids grow up faster, you know. It's like at 28, you see guitar players now. I mean, think about some of these guys that are out there now killing it. Like, how old is Mateus Asado? He's probably like under that, or maybe he's 28 now or something like that, or maybe he's 30. I don't know, but you know what I mean? Like, they've done, it just seems like they grew up faster and got better quicker and have done a lot by the time they're 25 or something. Back then, not so much. It was more like, I figure, or maybe I'm just, you know, giving myself a pass, but I felt more typical development level for a 28-year-old. You know, I just think high pressure gig like that. Of course, Peter Stroud was the right guy to pick, you know. And then once I went back 9 years later, well, I'd done the Jewel tour and Chris Cornell and all kinds of stuff by then. So then I had the you know, just miles under my belt or whatever to, you know, that I knew how to do it at that point, you know, on a high level. I'd done a ton of TV and all that by that point. So I knew how to mentally be in the game. Yeah. Let's see here. Robert Baker released a video comparing. Oh, that's the video I made. JUL 5800 and Plexi. Basically what I did. That's funny. I'll have to go listen to his video. Yeah, I mean, you know, spoiler alert or whatever. It's like the amp basically is circuit wise, you know, it is that. So of course it sounds like it, you know. It's then it's just down to transformers and tubes and things like that, but which, you know, Dave uses quality stuff, so it's kind of like an SL 60, 67 or 68. Like, of course it sounds like a Marshall because it's this Marshall circuit, you know. And you know, same thing with Dave's Plex or whatever, you know, they do those tones well because that's what they are, you know. They're a box of parts, you know. That's what amps are. There's not some like magic part that Marshall had or something back in the day, unless you consider original transformers or something, or Mullard tubes or whatever was going on, to be absolutely essential, which I guess some vintage purists do. But they're a box of parts, and you can kind of, if you know what's going on, you know, you can recreate those old tones pretty darn close. And I think most people here that have experience would agree, you know, get a good Sir, Friedman, Germino, you know, a few other brands that, you know, where it's like, yeah, that's basically hangs right there with the old ones, you know. It's not even as quite, if you're a believer in wood, I was having this argument on, you know, threads or whatever, debate on threads about Tonewood again. Some guys are like, it doesn't affect, you can make a guitar out of cement, it sound the same, it's all the pickups and all that stuff, right? But I'm a believer that wood totally matters. And the argument could be made that you kind of can't get Brazilian rosewood, and it's hard to find like light mahogany, and you know, it's hard to find even light alder. You know, it's different now than it was in the 50s or whatever. So guitars is another, you know, it's another discussion, I think. But amps kind of can do what anything that's been done before now, I think, and get right there. You know, speakers. It's like a little like, you know, the Celestian mystery with the original paper and all that, and the fire and whatever happened to the factory, and you know, it's like. But anyway, weren't a lot of gold top sprayed gold over another color. Yeah. I don't know that Gibson gold is that, but it might be. But yeah, a lot of metallics are like, for example, candy apple red is actually gold and red on top, you know, so there is that. It's a good question what the formula was for the Gibson gold. Somebody here might know. But if it was sprayed, I think it was just one paint color. But the thing is, the lacquer would green. You know, there was a certain thing in it that, especially when it hit sweat and started to fade and stuff, you'd see that greening around the edges, and it was just some sort of chemical reaction to, you know. Yeah. So, did you get Xmas, Christmas, gear gifts? Sort of, you know, not per se, but you know, I've got some new instruments and stuff that I'm taking on the road. So, yeah. I recall that, says Lauren. What's up, Lauren? I recall that Joe Bonamassa saying you and Dave could visit him sometime. I'd love to go visit him. It'd be great. Be very interesting, I think. Yeah. So let's see what else here. There's a group of people on YouTube deeply concerned about bias, yet have no idea what bias actually is. Yeah. I'm not that concerned about it as long as it's right. And by right, I mean whatever the guy that built the amp tells me I should set it at. As long as that's right there, then I know it's going to be safe and reliable. And no higher and no lower. Yep. Any thoughts on? Ooh, I just got to check. I'm continuing to just check here. My phone, which has got animal texts. Just to check on my cats. For those that are just joining, my cats are at the vet. That's why I'm doing this from home today. And I just waiting for the message that they're going to be ready to pick up at some point. Excuse me. Thoughts on Music Man guitars? Really good. Fretwork seems to be really good. I would agree. Yeah, they're nice guitars made in California. I like Sterling a lot. I think they're a great company. I'm a longtime Ernie Ball string user. I think the guitars are, yeah, they make a super quality instrument. I mean, going back to, I have, you know, one in my possession now, the EVH Eddie Van Halen model, which became the Axis years later. And it's a very, very well-made guitar. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Somebody says Bonamassa gets some hate, but I don't understand. A great player and super smart businessman. You know, he just it's just jealousy or, you know, whatever. You know, some people might just be like, you know, they've got there's always an opinion, right? I mean, you know, and you can't worry about it out there in the grand scheme. It's like, that's, you know, that's why I try and just be transparent about what I'm into and what I'm doing. And it's like, yeah, it's a, you know, if I'm talking about something, sure, it's marketing. That's what it is, you know, but it's honest in the sense that I'm not like being paid to sell you something like an actor on a farm, you know, a commercial for a pharmaceutical. I took Lipitor because whatever, you know, and it's just like they're not taking Lipitor. You know, it's like, you know, an actual person that uses the thing and then goes, yeah, I can get with this. I can get behind this and I can talk about it because it's honest. And there's enough gear out there where, you know, you can do that, I feel like, and it's honest and, you know, you're not like going to run out. Everything's good these days, at least. There's not much out there that sucks. It's just true. Pretty rare. I think it happens, but, you know, it's pretty rare that I get things I'm like, this is terrible, you know. Whereas in the 70s, that probably happened all the time, you know. There was all kinds of terrible stuff. So, yeah. Anyway. Yeah. It's almost like the more... I know a video's got reach beyond my subscribers when I start getting a lot of those kinds of comments, you know, which tells me that it's doing well, that it's getting out there and it's like new users to the channel, new viewers or whatever, you know, that are like, because they might not know my scene or they don't care. I don't know me from Adam. So it's like, you know, they might just be like, who's this jerk, you know, telling me like, yeah. So, yeah. Chris says, I want to see the GK amp back in action for you. Who said somebody could fix it? Was it Fryette? I should maybe ask him like where I should get it fixed. Cause I would love to get it working again. New speakers and fix all the problems with it. Yeah. I think I got more super chats I got to get to here. Yeah, there's one up there and there's more I missed at the bottom. So coming. I walked away from a Unicorn Mint 73 super lead, hand wired and cab completely stock, couldn't justify it. Was it a lot? Can you give us an idea of kind of the range, you know? Because maybe I need that. Like I need a hole in the head, but a cab and mint and all that. Ooh, kind of. Where's this amp that you speak of? Was it 100 watt? If you had to relearn how to play guitar today, how would you go about it? I mean, it's got to be a combination of the awesome, you know, availability and accessibility of information on the internet, and then real world, you know, like hanging with people and playing music. And there's no substitute for hanging with people and playing music. Maybe a good guitar teacher to kind of make sure you're on the right track and give you some feedback and all that. But man, I mean, the stuff you can get online is incredible, you know? So nothing wrong with that. You know, it just seems like, you know, that's just why we see kids now and they're like 13 and they sound mature and can play like crazy because they've learned stuff off the internet. It's like I say, it's not gonna give you that real world experience, but long way towards, you know, syncing your hands together and, you know, and all that. So it's all good, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I would probably, you know, I don't know if I had a kid or something that I was trying to get into it, I would probably be like, let's sign you up for this TrueFire course or something, or give you, what's that other, there's another, you know, kind of subscription based where you can pay so much every month and you get access to all the online lessons from a bunch of different people, that kind of thing, you know? So there's Guitario and there's other ones. Did I see Fluff's video on the X Machina Pulsar Mark II monitors? They're 10K a pair. No, I didn't. That's a lot. That is a lot. Did you like them? They better be good for 10K, right? That's a lot of dough. Aston Roy says, running a little late. Hope everyone's well, surviving the holidays. We're all good, man. Did everybody have a good Christmas and everything? Mine was really nice. It was great. Had 2 cats in the car driving all the way to Northern California, and they were just a pleasure, actually, both of them. It was uneventful and surprising and actually kind of nice. It was easier with 2 than it was with 1. Like they were chill. Plugged my guitar directly into my Marshall Super Lead last night. No effects or anything. And it sounded so amazing. Just raw amp and a guitar. 100%. I get it. I have a Fryette power station and Captor X, says Sean. Everyone can use their tube amps in the sweet spot. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's ways now to crank stuff and whatnot. What do you use for bass traps in your studio? So many years ago, when I first moved to the first kind of real proper project studio space that I had, which was in Santa Monica, California, I had a guy come in and make me a bunch of panels. He also made the shelves you see my amps sitting on. And it wasn't cheap, but I think they're really good. He did a good job. The bass traps are in all four corners of my room. They're open in the back, and they've got very, very thick layer of what kind of looks like insulation. And so it's open in the back, so the bass goes into the corner and hits that stuff. That's kind of it's like 702 or whatever the hell they call that stuff, rock wool kind of stuff. But he said better, whatever he felt he chose. But it looks like that. And so those are my bass traps, and they go floor to ceiling in all four corners. So the idea with that is like, you don't just want to put a piece of foam in the corner or something, you want to put something that traps the bass. So by having an open back and a thick layer of, like it's like 4 inches thick of this insulation style stuff, the bass goes in and gets sucked up in there. So that's the idea with the bass traps in the corners. Yeah, important that there's nothing on the backs of those. They go into the corner flush with the walls on either side, but there's that open area in the back where the bass can get soaked up. So then I have a cloud above my desk that's at an angle. So that soaks up any reflections off the floor. And then the diffusers on the walls are designed to absorb bass below 350 hertz and diffuse above that. So to not be too dead. So it's a bunch of panels that are all unevenly spaced. And the sound waves hit those and it breaks them up. So it's kind of taking a rectangular room and turning it into not a rectangular room, like you want in a studio. No, not a lot of square, whatever surfaces where sound waves can hit, reflect back, and then build up. That's the whole thing. So those panels you see on my wall, the wood kind of slat looking things, they're very, very thick, like this thick. And full of that insulation stuff, and there's holes in the slats where the bass is designed to get in there, I guess, and then get soaked up, and the odd spaced wood strips kind of diffuse and don't kill all the reflection. They just kind of diffuse it. Yeah, that's the idea. Wasn't cheap, but hey, I mean, you've heard me work in there since I had them done, which was well over 10 years ago. So I guess, if my stuff sounds okay, that's probably part of it. Yeah. On that note, when Pete recommends something, it makes my wallet bleed. Super chat. Thanks for all you've done this year. Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Paying it forward to someone else's question. Cheers and happy New Year from Calgary. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Hope you're well up there in Alberta, my home province. And appreciate the super chat, and Happy New Year. All the best to you in the new year, and to all you guys. Hope you all have a successful year, and that you get everything that you want, and that you got everything you wanted for Christmas, if you celebrate. Okay. Let's see. I have a 2555X Silver Jubilee 100-watt reissue in mint shape. Would you hang on to it? I mean, if it's a reissue and stuff, it's not like, an original that's going to, it'll probably hold its value well, and they're good amps, but if the tone's not resonating with you, no pun intended, that would be one you could move along and get something, make a lateral move or whatever financially, but maybe something tonally that, you like better, I would say. What do you guys think? That's my opinion. Yeah. Didn't the early JCM 2000s have overheating issues? I think maybe the little guy, the DSL 40, I remember that they had problems, the combos. The heads, I don't ever remember that. But I remember the combo being a thing. I think the 30th anniversary too, that was a 100-watt head, 3-channel. Those had some issues with reliability that might have been around thermal stuff. I don't really remember, but yeah. Have you come across the clunk issue with a flush mounted Floyd hitting the body? Yeah, sure. You can block it in the back so that the block hits a trem stopper, and you can put a pad of stuff on there. Now your mileage may vary. I've got different guitars with different things that, you know, that you can try different, you know, it's got to make a solid contact, obviously, against the trem stopper. So this is something that you put in the back by the wood of the back of the, how do I explain? You take the tremolo cavity cover off or whatever off the back of the guitar, and then the block, you take this piece of wood that, you take a piece of, it's like a little bent piece of metal, almost like an L bracket, I think is what they look like, if my memory serves. And you screw it into the wood right there, and then the trem block just sits against it, and, you know, avoids hitting the, if you've got your setup to hit the face of the guitar and you don't like how hard it hits. I've never put anything on the face of the guitar. I mean, I guess that was Eddie with his quarter, right, for a while. But there might be something to solve that, but most people solve it with a trem stopper in the back, like I'm describing. So just look up Floyd Rose trem stopper, and you'll find, maybe on the FU Tone website or something, they've got one. And I'm sure if you get one from somebody like FU Tone, they probably sell one, I bet. It'll probably have some sort of pad so that when the block hits, it's got something somewhat soft to rest again, instead of just metal on metal, you know, because that's when you get the big old clunk. Yeah. You should be proud of number 2. You signed mine at Sweetwater. That album is timeless. Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. Nice to meet you at Sweetwater as well. Had fun out there the last time. Enjoy going there. Yeah. Todd says, I find it enjoying just to do my own music or own music on Instagram. Yeah, sure. Whatever. I mean, you know, putting it out there in the world and it feels good, you know, like, this is me. You know, you're like a kid drawing a picture and, you know, showing it to, you know what I mean? It's no different. It's like, you know, I'm proud of this. It's the same energy. So would you consider touring to support your album? Ooh, I mean, maybe if the situation was there where I could do it and it made sense financially. You know, I'm not of the mind of like, oh, I want to go get in the van and, you know, drive, you know, I just don't have it in me, man. But I mean, I play local shows and stuff and occasional gigs and to support, you know, a tour would have to be like, there was this great idea I thought that we had a few years ago. It was me and Soren Anderson from, he plays with Glenn Hughes. He's a really nice guy. He's a great guitar player. Some of you've probably seen him play, you know, Strat into Marshall kind of guy, like really, really good player. And he's got some records out, and I think they're probably not unlike mine, you know, musically. And he had this idea of doing a tour together where we would use one band. And I really liked that idea, you know, that, you know, he's really hooked up with promoters and people over in Europe, you know, knows a lot of people and stuff. And he's got a nice studio in Copenhagen. Be like, man, if I could go there and rehearse, and, you know, we could head out and do like a, you know, close, you know, Germany and Denmark and, you know, Netherlands, maybe that kind of thing, like just kind of a regional tour or something, and use one band and maybe just play one set where we each play each other's songs, you know, where I could back him up, play rhythm guitar, you know, and his stuff. And we could do that. Man, that sounds like fun to me. That sounds like a lot of fun. And then, you know, you're not, you know, footing the bill for the whole band and the van and everything else yourself. You could, you know, split it between, and I just think it'd be great. Like, you know, you don't just hear my music, you hear someone else's, and we go song to song to song. I loved that idea. I mean, I thought that'd be really cool. So maybe that at some point, you know. I'd like to get another record though. There's some songs on my record, you know, maybe Dirty Town, for example, where it's like, yeah, I could go out and totally rock that live and probably do it justice. One guitar, no problem. But there's a lot of music on there that's very layered. And it's like, I would love it if Perplexed, for example, off my first record, I could do that, no problem. But the layered stuff where there's so many parts and harmonies and things, it's like, it gets difficult, you know? So when I record another record, I kind of want to do it almost like a little more like Beck style, like Jeff Beck style, where it's like, you know, a band kind of performing live. I mean, that's kind of what Bonamassa's music is too. It's a little more, you know, not so many overdubs and layered and produced, you know, a little more live feel, like, and then it's easier to pull off live. So take the Rush approach, you know, where like they always, you know, when the keys come in, the bass guitar drops out, and now it's Taurus pedals because Geddy's thinking about having to do it all live, you know. That kind of makes sense to me. Yeah. Would you ever use a Helix? Sure, man, I have. I mean, yeah, I did, full clinic tours in Asia and Europe and stuff using the HXFX, also in the States, as my effects for with a PT15 and 4 cable. A little rash here or something. That happens to me sometimes. Maybe it's coffee. Weird. There, that feels better. Yeah, just you ever get that? Like, oh, why am I red all of a sudden? Yeah, but anyway, I lost my train of thought. Helix also I used when I did a Toque gig. What's the Canadian rock cover band that has Todd Kearns and my buddy Brent Fitz and Corey Turco and stuff. But I was filling in for Corey, and I did a gig with them in Canada where I used, because he used a Helix, and I copied his patches. He sent me his patches just to make it easier to learn all, because there's a lot of material for one gig. And I ended up using the Helix on that. I also used the Helix in Japan as my backup rig doing Kiyoshi Nagabuchi's tour, where I had all my kind of, or at least a fair amount of my presets duplicated in the Helix that were on my main rig. So I have used it and would, and, yeah, good piece of gear. Would I use it as my primary rig? Absolutely could. If they're like, you've got to use a Helix for this, that's what we've got, and can you make that work? I'd be like, yeah, I can actually make that work, for in a number of different scenarios. So yeah, first choice is always amps. I mean, what can I say? I'm a tube amp nerd, but yeah. Yeah. Arthur's asking, any plans to have your signature amp modeled for the Line 6 Helix line? Not really. I don't think it's the kind of thing where they officially approach people. They kind of do the thing where they do it if they want it in their line, and then they give it another name, So, like the Friedman stuff is the Placator example for the B, right? So it's not like they did the deal with Dave or whatever. They just kind of model. They have a huge collection of amps. I've been to Line 6, and they've got some beautiful old vintage stuff and whatnot. Anyways, how do you deal with writer's block under lack of inspiration? Put on different grooves. Find some music that you like to. I'm kind of skipping around here. Put on different grooves to write to. So, like, if you normally just start with playing guitar riffs and you're trying to write, chances are you might write at the same tempo a lot, or in the same kind of groove, or in the same time signature. Put on a drum groove that's in 7/8 or 7/4, or put on a 6/8 feel that's a different tempo than you would normally write something at, and just see what comes out. Put the guitar in an alternate tuning, perhaps, put the guitar in the Rain song tuning, which is amazing, and see if you can come up with something. And then furthermore, just listen to people, different artists, and try and get some inspiration. God, I heard an amazing record this morning on the way to coffee. I'm just going to ask Britt here. I want to know what we were listening to this morning, because I want to recommend something. So what was that guy we were listening to? I'm going to recommend this because it's so out there and awesome. This record I heard this morning was so interesting, man. It's kind of, I couldn't compare it to anybody really. Sort of these like cool, like just cool as hell, like soulful kind of grooves. But then this one tune, man, had these strings that came in that were like jarringly loud, like a cello part. And it's like unlike anything I've ever heard before, but so cool. Father John Misty is the guy. So check out the latest record and just like listen to some of the tunes. Like, well, the first tune sounded quite pedestrian to me. It wasn't anything outstanding. It was just okay. But like some of the other songs on the record was like, whoa, I've never heard a song like this in my life. Like, and what he would do with melodies. There was something that was clearly kind of a Mixolydian sort of blues sound with a flat 7. He comes in on the vocal melody on the natural 7. And then goes to the root. So it was like, whoa, that is a weird note to sing. Then he sings a certain bit of the phrase on that note. Then he went to the root. Then he went to the flat 9. And then he goes to the 9. I realized what he was doing. I was like, why would he pick that note to start on? And it was unlike anything I've ever heard. It was like this really cool groovy tune where you got this weird note coming in, and then he kind of, you know, sings the whole first verse sort of almost like stream of consciousness style, like where the melody never stopped, like I'm talking right now, and the words keep going, and he's going and he's going. But it was literally like he was like on a note like this, and then he went up a half step, and then he went up a half step, and then he went to another half step, and then and if you hear the tune, you're going to know what I'm talking about. But against the chords, it was like, oh my God, that is such a commitment. And then every other note that he kind of sang in the B section was not normal. It was like not even in the key, but it was obviously intentional. I was like, how do you even do that? Like, how do you sing? I don't even know if I could do that. Like, sing the wrong note and go to it, like, and remember, like it. I was like, wow. But and not only that, like, so it sounds like might be really awful, but it wasn't. It was great. It was like totally intrigued, unlike anything I've heard. So Father John Misty, check that out. It was good stuff. Very, very interesting. Us 70s generation guys didn't have access to YouTube and endless knowledge. We had record player and guitar magazine. Yeah, it was a slower path, but once you got something, you really felt like you worked for it, right? You know? So it's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. Mateus turned 31 today. Oh, yeah, I saw that. That's right. It is his birthday. Oh, that's interesting. So, okay, when he obviously was, you know, blowing up, I mean, it was around 2017 or so, I think. So that's a minute ago, 7 years ago, I think. I know time flies, right? It probably doesn't feel like that long. It feels like the new guy to a lot of people. But yeah, so he would have been 24 years old or something, right? And really amazing, you know. But, you know, I guess a lot of the greats were like that. I mean, Van Halen, whatever, you know, obviously 22 years old or something, and just, you know, absolutely destroying on guitar. So pretty interesting. Yeah. Oh, somebody's mentioning, like, I was talking about greening Les Pauls, like, you know, the gold, and they were talking about the silver burst that also turned green. Yeah, that's interesting. I know what you mean. The kind of the like Adam from Tool, that style Les Paul, the customs, they would get a little green. Chris says it's the copper flakes in the paint turning green. There's Arthur with a super chat showing that support for fights against Tonewood naysayers. Thanks, man. Appreciate the super chat. I can buy some more coffee around here. I'm going to need it today. I didn't sleep good last night. It's like waking up at odd times and stuff. I end up probably with 4 hours of sleep or something. It's not good enough. Still think that episode where you and Tim Pierce visited Michael Landau was one of the best. Actually, we didn't. It was somebody help me. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right now. That's the coffee not kicking in. Awkward silence because I can't remember. I'm just completely spacing on someone's name, and it's not because I don't greatly admire them and respect them, but I'm just having one of those word, you know. You ever have that happen where, like, sometimes I worry, like, where, you know, I'll go in, let's say it's like a local bar or something like that, and I go in and I haven't been there for maybe a month or two or something like that, but I'll see a bartender and I can't remember their name. And I know that I knew their name for like a long time, like a couple of years. It was like, I had one happen like that some number of years ago. But I just couldn't remember her name. And I was like, oh God, that's not good. Anyways, that was my segue of getting out of that. Your first record, one of my favorites, says Ren. Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. The first record, this guy shows up all the time here. I'm just gonna like get rid of him. Ban user and delete their comments. This guy, this dude shows up all the time in my comments and it says like the stupidest stuff, but he's just a sad person. So he says, this twink thinks he's 19. I always know because he always uses the word twink. It's like, dude, was Gary Moore a twink? He had long hair when he was, you know, my age and older. You know, jackass. Anyway, I just think it's funny. I think that trolls are so funny, and I'm so lucky because we have so few of them here. You know what I mean? But I generally actually like, you know, I joke around like, if they don't show up, I worry about them. Like, are they okay? But I generally have like, if somebody's like that in pain that they're, you know, and they might not even realize it, but if they're so like desperate for attention that they go to that, you know, it's just so sad to me, right? And it's so old too. It's like the internet and, you know, obviously live streams and forums and like it's been all been around so long, and everybody gets it now, you know, I think by this point, you know, so it's like it's just so silly. But you know what I mean? It's just like you can't. I think it's equal parts sort of funny, bizarre, and actually really quite sad at this point. So I pity you, dude. Anyways, who decides the CRS set list? So ultimately, it's James, who is the MD and kind of band leader, and he's you know, always got lots of opinions from all of us, like you know, songs that people want to do, songs people think would be better, and he's really quite good at you know, taking everybody's concerns and wants and desires and all that into account. And because, you know, here's the other thing is that we tour mainly in England, right, or UK, and then mainly England. You know, we go to Scotland and stuff, you know, Wales, but it's mainly, you know, all these British gigs. And the music there, I don't claim to know what was going on in the 70s or the 80s, you know. And so there's a lot of people there that, like, you know, like we play tunes by Status Quo, and we play tunes by Rainbow. And, you know, Rainbow was a little bit more of a rock niche band, I feel like, in America. You know, even Deep Purple was not what they were. Like Europe, you know, Deep Purple was as big as Zeppelin and big as, you know, and I feel like in America, not quite, you know what I mean? And certainly Rainbow, not quite. They were more like a, you know, right? I mean, you know, I just don't think so. So there's songs, you know, by bands like that, you know, are massive in England that just wouldn't translate to a US audience. So that's where I just defer, you know, I can't, if they're like, oh, this song was massive. And Wayne is a great resource, you know, he's the bass player in the Classic Rock Show because he knows that music. You know, he was around, he's a little bit older than I am, and he grew up on it and stuff. So if you want to know if a song was big and popular and like resonated in the 70s or the 80s, you ask Wayne, you know, in England. So we all sort of, it's a combination of all those things, because, you know, James is quite a bit younger than myself or Wayne, you know, and he's got his own things that he likes and stuff, but he's open to all that kind of stuff. Now, when we went to America, he was relying a little bit more on Rudy and I. Rudy's from America as well. What do we got to play in America to, you know, like, and I was like, well, we can't do this song and we can't do this song because nobody's going to know it, you know? So we would replace with songs that people know in the States. So, yeah. Anyways. What else we got here? Start out with real amps, kids. Yeah, I sort of agree with that, because to me, you got to get, like, it's really helpful to at least have control over your hands and the muting and all that stuff. And it's things that we don't think about after playing guitar for a while. But the first year or whatever, it's like playing violin, you know, it's like a nightmare for the first 6 months. It sounds like nails on a chalkboard. But then once you figure out the bow technique, it's syncing your hands and intonation, it's like that can only come through hands on the instrument. Now, there's a certain thing with electric guitar where if all you did was play through headphones in your bedroom or whatever, man, if you get out loud on a stage, feedback, what's that, you know? So it's definitely like really important, I think, to play with a little bit of volume, you know, and know what's happening, you know, with your hands. Yeah. Moving through the chat. Somebody's saying Sir's customer service is spot on. I had an issue last week and they got right back to me and sent me what I needed. Yeah, they're great, man. I mean, just start a ticket if you've ever got a problem with a Sir, and they'll sort you out. And if it has to go all the way to John, you know, if he's often the buck stops there, you know, and he's happy to look at all day long when I'm there, when I go to visit him, there's guys bringing guitars in from the shop, you know, not necessarily repairs, but things where they want his opinion on something. You know, well, what do you think about this? You know, like, and he'll pick it up and look at it and go, oh, take it out and give it a little bit of this and do this, you know, and he hands it back to the builders. That happens all the time. And sometimes it's guitars that might come back for fret work or for, you know, something. And everything has to be perfect with him always. So, you know, it's a good thing, you know. He's a special guy, man. Have you used a Nano Cortex in a live situation? Not a Nano, just the full size one. I haven't yet, no. Yeah. 9 days in London with the family. Got home the 22nd. I'd be an ass to complain, says Philip. Oh, man, that sounds fun. I'll be over there soon. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, wow, cat's enjoying the ride in the car. Yeah, my cats are good in the car. They don't like initially, but once they, you know, you're on the road and stuff, they go, all right. They just deal with it. And then they tend to climb up on your lap, at least my cats, and curl up and go to sleep, because I think that's the place where there's the least movement. So that's nice. Cat sleeping on you. You just drive or sit in the passenger seat. Crates, yeah, I can't do cat carriers in the car. Some people might be critical of that, but they'll freak out, lose their minds. So that doesn't work. But you know, you just drive safely and hope for the best, I guess. So that's how it is. Okay, what time is it? It's 1:21. Yeah, so I've been going about an hour and 21 minutes. I guess I started that late. I'm gonna go for about another half hour, I think, unless I get a text here that I gotta go get the cats. So okay. What else we got here? Thanks for the recommendation on the bass trap, says Flux. Checking them out for sure for my studio. Yeah, I know, like some of the more sort of commercially available products, or like whatever, like consumer, you know, like you can go to atsacoustics.com, ATS Acoustics, and they will sell a bass trap for corners that is like a 4-inch by either 24 or 48. So big, long rectangle, but it'll be 4 inches thick, and you can order them with open backs so that they can be mounted in a corner, and then the back is open. We'll soak up the bass. Basically, no pun intended, will do just what mine do, my custom ones. So look for those for bass traps. That's what you want for the corners. You know, ask them, you know, if you got any questions, just don't hesitate to ask them. They're a good company. I bought from them before. But yeah, I would recommend the 4-inch thick, 48, you know, 4-inch by 48 tall, however they are wide, probably 24. And then just mount that in the corner, and you're, you know, you can even get 2 of them if you want. If you got high ceiling or whatever, you want to go all the way floor to the ceiling, basically, or close to it. Mount them off the ground a little bit, you know, so you leave this much at the bottom. That's what mine are. And then so they go most of the way to the ceiling, and a little gap at the top, right in the corner, open back. That's what you want. And then the ones for the flat, you know, for the walls, those can obviously have to be wood backed. A little easier mounting. Did you do the narration for Van Halen 1 behind the music? No. Does it sound like me? 1978 was like an explosion. Van Halen 1 from the first note. Yeah, I would do that. Do a voiceover for that if they ask me. 100%. David Lee Roth, Michael Anthony, Alex Van Halen, Edward Van Halen, Van Halen. Is that good? Should I do a take 2? I always enjoyed the swing feel of Ed's rhythm on Take Your Whiskey Home. Oh, man. It's great, man. That's the friggin' thing, right? It's like Hyper ZZ Top, you know? He was so good at that stuff. So groovy. On the Fryat power station, how do you set the presence and depth? You know, mostly all the way down. Yeah, to not affect the original tone. I'll sometimes use a little bit of either, more often the presence, if I just want a little bit of something on top. but I kind of like the sound with them off, to be honest. Yeah, it's the sort of flattest, I think. Yeah. Oh, there's a super chat. Sorry, you've been waiting for a while there. Have an SM57. Unfortunately, I can't afford some of the nicer ones I see people pair with the 57. Any recommendations from a mic at the 300-ish or less price? Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like the ST170 would be great. That's that ribbon from Sterling. I have no reservations recommending that. It's a really nice sounding ribbon, and it's very inexpensive. I think they're $200. So check that out. A Lewitt. They make nice condenser mics. If you can get into the 440, that's the one that I use for my voice actually in the studio when I'm doing like my voiceover on anytime I'm on camera talking or whatever. It's a Lewitt 440. They might be a little more than 300. They have slightly cheaper models, I think, but they might be 300. They're not expensive, you know. Lewitt, Lewitt. Nice mics. What else? I mean, I'm not really a 421 guy, but some people are. I think they're more than that. Maybe you can find one used for that, but it's never been quite my thing. I like to use either a condenser or a ribbon, generally blended with a dynamic. The two dynamic thing. I don't know. Yeah. So what else? Audio-Technica, man. I mean, like I love the 4050. They had a mic called a 4047 that was really nice too. I'm just going to look here. Let me see if they're the 4040 or 4047. 4047, $299. There you go. I'd feel pretty good about recommending that. I have a 4050, and it's a little more, you know, it's got different polar patterns and stuff like that. But I wonder if the capsule is the same on a 4040. I'm not sure, but I'd say that would be a great choice, you know, for a second microphone. The 4047 is $750, more dough. Not sure why the big difference in price or what's different exactly, but anyway, looks like you can get a used one for $499. Ooh, there's a used one for $399 at Guitar Center right now. Heads up, HE4047, $399 used at Guitar Center. I see it just showed up in like a Google search. As long as it's, you know, you can return it if it doesn't work or something like that. I'd probably go that route, probably without hesitation. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Gonna just kind of move down through the chat here. How do I get the Eddie Van Halen Brown sound? That's like much of my YouTube channel devoted to it, but I've got videos on it. Look up the Eddie Van Halen pickup and the amp video we made. Got my Quad Cortex yesterday, coming from a Helix LT. I love it. It's so much better and more easy to get good tones out of it. They are really easy. That's the one thing that I really liked about them. And it's very simple to just, you know, you pull up a greenback cab and you pull up the 2203 and it's like, oh yeah, that sounds like a pretty good Marshall through a greenback cab. It's not difficult. Pull the blocks in, away you go, you know. Really good. So I had a question earlier before you started. Do you prefer to record a track with verb, delay, and compression in pre or post? Oh, well, generally speaking, if it's a guitar-oriented effect that I feel like is part of the guitar sound, so a compressor pedal, for example, yeah, you got to use that, you know. It's a different thing compressing a track after than it is running into a pedal compressor and hitting an amp. You know, that it's a different sound, different feel. It's going to make you play differently. You know, or let's say it's an edge style echo where it's a timed echo. Well, I would definitely do that into the amp and record it. You know, think Memory Man, you know, or Space Echo or whatever. Like, you know, it's if it's a part of the guitar part, you know, when you wrote it or something, you get the delay going through the amp and it sounds cool. Yeah, just record that. If it's just window dressing on the tone, like delay on a solo, that's just kind of ambient in the background, there's no reason to print that. You know, you can, and I have, but as a not hard and fast rule, but a general rule, I would say leave that for the mix. You know, there's no reason to back yourself into a corner, because you might just decide, oh, it's a little too loud, the delay, you know, when you go to mix, and then it's like nothing you can do about it. So yeah. So the answer is it depends. Had to drive my friend's cats from Netherlands to Denmark, 8-hour drive where the cats would scream the first 5 hours. Yeah, and then they finally give up, right? Yeah. Toby didn't like the drive the first couple times, and he was not happy. And he still isn't that happy, but he's like, here we are, the car, I get it. And he's just like, I better just chill. And he's like that energy now, you know? And he knows he's going to be okay. He tends to just get in my lap and go to sleep now, which is great. Guitars for your project there with the super chat. Thank you. What are your thoughts on the Nano Cortex? Why is there gapless switching on this and not on the quad? They must be using the chip in a way that doesn't have to, you know what I mean? Where it's like, they're just utilizing it in maybe an efficient way, you know? I mean, maybe it's something they'll get to on the quad if they can figure out how to do it. You know, I think they eventually did that on Axe-Fx, right? Where if you've got enough processing or 2 chips or something, you can do it. There's not very much going on in the Nano, so it's like, maybe it's that. Maybe they just designed it to be that from the beginning. Gapless switching, you know, maybe there's like 2 chips in there and it's all devoted to, you know, just the amp captures and then a few simple effects, and then they can jump between the 2. And because there must be something like that going on, because it's when you load up a new capture, I think it's kind of like loading into RAM or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you've only got 1 RAM, I'm slightly talking out my butt right now, but yeah. Why is there gapless switching on this? I don't know. It's a question for Neural, but prefer presets over scenes and tired of front of house bitching about my Friedman BE100. 4 presets plenty for me. I don't know, man. I mean, on a quad, it's like, I know what you mean, you prefer it, but is it really that big of a deal? Because on a quad, for most things, unless you've got this crazy patches going with 4 million things, you can easily set up scenes so that it's almost like having 2 guitar rigs and you're switching. Like I do that in my clinic. I have like 2 completely different effects things going, pitch shifter on one that's pitching the guitar down and everything. And then on the other chain, it's like a totally different everything. And it's almost like I'm switching from one rig to the other within a preset using scenes. Some things getting bypassed, you know, outputs getting muted, like the whole 9 yards. You can get as complex with it as you want. I know it's ultimately maybe for your brain easier to deal with everything in a preset and then go to another preset and then go to another preset. And it's just simple, but can be done within the quad with the 4 processors. Now, yeah, I don't really, like, to your question, I don't really know why you know, the gapless thing isn't possible. They did it in the Helix, right? It limited, though, things like the effects you could use and things. They made it so you could switch presets, but you couldn't, like, right? I think. But the spillover and everything, if you were going to do that, it meant that, because I think a Helix is 2 processors, I think, it meant that you were limited in each preset with what you could load up and stuff, I think, right? That's my memory of when I'm trying it. So anyway, what do you prefer, Friedman small box or Plexi? Well, it just depends on what you're doing. Once again, it depends. But here's the thing. If you want a loop, you got to go with the small box if you need an effect loop, because right there, you know, if you need a gain, like, you know, modern, you got to go with the small box because it's got the BE channel. It's more gainy, you know, even if you just need 2 sounds. I mean, a cleaner sound and a you know, substantially dirtier sound, and you don't want to use pedals, you got to go with the small box. If you want the true Plexi thing and you want it at you know, like, because you got the post phase inverter master on there, you want it at a reasonable volume, it's a little different animal, you know, to go with the other one. Now, the small box, I mean, you can make it sound like a Plexi by cranking up the Plexi channel, cranking that master way up there. But now you got a very loud amp. So, because it doesn't have a post phase master built in or anything. So, you know, it's a different, I would say the Plex is the purist that wants the Plexi sound. You're going to add some pedals, wants it at, you know, anywhere from reasonable to screaming loud volumes, because you can do reasonable with the post phase master. And what else? Just the particular feel and dynamic and everything of a Plexi when you don't have any cascaded gain thing going on is a certain thing for a certain kind of person, you know? Maybe you want to be able to jumper channels and things like that and do the bass channel and stuff, which you can't do on a, because you like a certain sound, that you can't do on a small box. I particularly kind of like, like for example, a jumpered plexi with the normal channel up around 3 or 4, and then the treble channel with the big bright cap usually on, but barely mixed in. You just turn up the control a little bit, and there's your clean with sparkle, and it's got this great sound for like a Strat neck pickup or something. Some of the best clean sounds are that. That's a little trick there. Yeah. What model did Pete recommend in the Sterling? It's the ST170, I do believe. Let me find it here. ST170 mic. Yeah. Is that it? Yeah. Active ribbon mic. I see some used. I thought they were $200. I see some used for around anywhere from 160 to 240. So let's see. Oh man, there might even be one at Guitar Center for like $100. I think that's the thing. These mics, they're cheap to begin with, and then they're not gonna hold their value that well. But $100, there you go. A really good sounding mic. I mean, as long as it's not damaged. Ribbons can be a little bit delicate, but here's somebody's recommendation on GearSpace. I have one. Very solid build, very balanced across the spectrum for a ribbon and quiet. I would agree with that 100%. It's quiet, with the preamp, internal preamp, they've gained it up. So it's got lots of output, and the preamp's quiet. So it doesn't, like often with ribbons, it's dependent on your mic pre, because you'll turn up your pre. And if you don't have a good pre, then you're introducing a bunch of noise and stuff into the signal, because ribbons are just kind of low output. But because ST's active, ST170, it's got lots of gain, lots of clarity, like what this person said, very balanced across the spectrum for a ribbon. I would agree. I hear that as like nice top end, Corey, thanks for the super chat. I know I can Google this and get an AI response, but I like your guitar deity insights. Yeah, AI. God, some of the responses are like, I kind of hate that, man. It's like I saw somebody say like a while ago, like I don't want AI to tell, like I want like a person's advice. And I agree. It's good for some things, but you always know when it's AI, and it's like, it's sometimes wildly inaccurate. Like the way it's written, it sounds like very confident, right? But it's like, this is bullshit. This is a computer making up something that doesn't, some of these, with guitar, it's like, it's too like narrow of a, it's very specific, like the questions that get asked. I'll grab that super chat that just disappeared in a sec there. So anyways, will you explain to me what FRFR is? Yeah. Full range, flat response is FRFR. So like a PA speaker that is as flat as possible. So the idea being that, let's say you've got a guitar modeler, Helix, Axe Effects, Quad Cortex. You love the sound, say in headphones or through your studio monitors. It sounds like there's my perfect, that's exactly, you've got this cab sim selected and whatever, but now you want to reproduce that louder live on stage. Well, you kind of need the equivalent of a studio monitor, or something that is technically as flat as possible in a PA style speaker. Sometimes PA style speakers, or these FRFRs, can be kind of not flat response. They can be kind of hyped in the low end, or, have their own thing going on. So, right, because the idea being technically you want to as flat as possible so that it sounds like you want the speaker to get out of the way sonically, so that your perfect Celestion impulse response is just so, you know what I mean? So does that make sense? So, yeah, and I sort of think it's difficult, although I've heard some recently that are getting better and better. There's one coming out of the NAMM show that's killer. That was like, okay, that sounds a hell of a lot like a guitar amp to me, cabinet. So, it's a time of abundance as guitar players. Thank you for the super chat, and hopefully I explained it thoroughly. Can you load the signature plugs into the Quad Cortex? Couple, yeah. Yes, you can load the at least the Gojira and the Plini, right? I think are the two. They might have added more since I've last looked, because I haven't looked for a minute. And they're all supposed to be available eventually, just taking time to port them over. Can I get a good Van Halen tone with my Friedman IRX for 1984? You know, 1984, because of the pitch and stuff, you know, just mainly the pitch. It's not that hard to go there. Although I recently had this epiphany that maybe the coolest, not the coolest because you can't pick a coolest, but one of the coolest displays of Eddie Van Halen's guitar sound and what was so great about a Plexi was Hot for Teacher, because he's playing the flying V for the whole thing and switching from the neck pickup to the bridge pickup. So neck pickup in the verse with the volume down, and then he hits the bridge. And I realized when I was listening in the car one day at low volume that the amp is doing that thing that I loved that you would hear on his, it's like the Mean Street thing, and where the chord goes like that, right? And you hear it actually on Hot for Teacher, right? It's not flat, which is just sorry, more what like kind of modern gain amps do. That transformer sag though, and the power amp and that thing where every time he would hit the A chord is so bitching on Hot for Teacher. And then when he switches to the neck pickup, it's, you know, obviously it's the same, it's one amp, it's clean to dirty, you know. Maybe some of you don't know that, but it's like that's how he did it, a flying V with the neck pickup turned down to probably like 1 or a half, you know, and then it's totally clean, and then he hits the bridge for the verse, and it's like full on Marshall roar. It wasn't 2 amps or anything like that. And that's the beauty of the Plexi right there in one song. But yeah, so if you add to your IRX a micro pitch from Eventide and you blend that in a little bit, you're right there, man. I mean, to me, it's like, there it is. It sounds like that sound, you know, either that or get a, you know, an H9 and use it on the, I think there's a preset in it called 1984. Basically, it's micro pitch or 949 style, you know, pitch shifting, whatever. Because when 84 was out, I don't think the H3000 was out yet. He used the 949 or 919 or 949, the precursor, but it's basically the same thing. It's detuned. Yeah. So you add that, and it's right there, man. It sounds really good. Yeah, and the IRX is great, especially since he did the update. The update really took the, like, I thought the pedal was really good before, and then that took it to another level. It's like, oh, it's very realistic feeling and sounding now with some of the tweaks that were done sort of in the digital realm to the power amp sim and stuff like that in it. Yeah. Cab IR. I would use, well, whatever sounds good to you. I mean, green, it's, you know, just use a greenback something or other. Probably Dave's, you know, there's his 6402 cone or whatever is in there. But pick a 412 greenback IR that sounds good to you, you know, and you're right there. Beyond that, it's mostly in the hands, man. And, you know, just a little, you know, Marshally tone on the B channels, good. Or, you know, Plexi side's probably not enough gain. It's more use the gainier channel and find the gain where it's maybe 3/4 of the way up or something. And you're not going to get quite that Plexi thing that I was talking about with the sag or whatever, because it's not a amp with a power amp and all that stuff in it. But you're going to be very close, and for playing most circumstances, it's going to sound great. Would you say Glenn Tipton is underrated? I kind of think so, actually. I think both Glenn Tipton, KK Downing, and also, you know, Dave Murray and Adrian Smith are sort of underrated guitar players. I remember listening to both Priest and Maiden a lot, like in the 80s, and going like, why aren't these guys more highly regarded? Their solos are really tasty and back to back, and the harmonies and the things that they would do, you know, both those bands. And I mean, people, you know, appreciated them and stuff. But and Glenn later on, virtuosic, I would say. Yeah, he was kind of, you know, you would see him do sweeping stuff and everything. I think he was influenced by the shredders of the day in the 80s, and he seemed to really keep advancing, you know, with his chops and stuff like that. Yeah. So pretty cool. Yeah. Are you going to get your hands on the Bogner Snorkeler? Is he doing an amp? Like the Snorkeler mod, is he doing a new amp? It's really good. That particular mod is great for metal. I've heard, you know, Snorkeler mods that he's did, and I was like, what is that amp? Sounds great. So yeah. Thoughts on 21 amps. So it's been a great show today, by the way, guys. So we got 350 people sort of around for most of the time. And I really appreciate you being here and stuff. And sometimes when I do it at home, I feel like not as many people show up, but you did today. For those that don't know, I'm here because I'm waiting for a call from the vet to go pick up my cats, which are just getting a little exam. So yeah, that's why I'm at home today. I do have to go to the studio later and do some work though. Jonathan says, thoughts on 21 amps. They're everywhere now. I always find them a little too weak. I kind of agree. I mean, I think my PT15 is right there on the edge. It works with the band. I played it with a couple different gigs locally, and then also did a whole tour with it. And it sounds great, especially if you're on in-ears. Who cares? You can get a little volume feedback, keeps the sound guy happy because it's not too loud on stage. It's totally cool. But if I was relying on the amp mainly for volume and I was right beside the drummer, then I think 15 or 20 watts, you just sort of run into a little bit of a wall, especially if you need loud, punchy, clean. There's just no way around that. So 30 or 35 watts seems to be, it just is what it is, right? So seems to be a little better for that. Now, when I was in Classic Rock Show using the PT15, which I did for at least one tour, if not two, I think I used it on 2 tours. The drums were all the way across the stage, far stage right in the back. And so I was like, upper, forward stage left, and the drums were in the back stage right. And I was so far away that it was like, I don't need to be that loud over here. Cause it's because it's mainly the drums that you got to settle in around, I find. And if you're, trying to vibe with, the band and stuff and you can't hear your guitar, it's always like, right. And I think that's what you're talking about. A little too weak for a full rock band, right? The bass player's got to, right in there with the drums, and you're like, I'm, sandbagging a little here, So I get that. So it all depends. Depends how hard your drummer hits. Depends where you are on stage, how big the stage is, if you can get away from the kit a little bit and stuff. Yeah, and if you're on in-ears. So, yeah. That's an interesting perspective from Valve Tone. With you on AI, the internet strength is connecting people to people, not people to AI. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, that's part of that's what we do here, right? Connecting people to people. It's like nice to hang with you guys and talk, and this, direct line of communication without some gatekeeping or minimal gatekeeping, I guess, is what it's all about. It's been the latter half of my career. So very helpful. Yeah, that's what I appreciate about the internet. Any end of the year YouTube shows coming up with Dave and Mark? I hadn't talked about it. I don't think so for now. Honestly, it's just like on a personal level, I'm like this December has been intense, and it continues to be intense. And I guess it'll chill a little once I get to England and settle in and play a few gigs. I just have a lot going on right now, and I feel like it's the few days I took at Christmas was nice. I was able to turn my brain off a little bit, but I can't take on one more thing before I go. So even if they asked me, I probably wouldn't do a live stream. But once I get over there, it'll be easier. Maybe I can do one at some point when I'm over there remotely. But yeah, I have a lot. I know it's all going to be okay, but it's all good stuff. Boy, quality problems, but boy, do I have a lot on my plate for the first 6 months of the year. And it's like, can I do this? I do have that feeling. Can I do this, you guys? All this stuff, is it all going to be, it's just a lot. So, that's just my honest. It's just the amount of things is that it's not anything in particular. It's like it's going to be a lot of travel and stuff for, just because I'm back-to-backing a few things, and I've just never done it quite like that. But that's just me being honest. I think it's all going to be great. You just rise to the occasion, don't you? Right? That's what you do. You rise to the occasion. Okay. What else we got here? I'm here. I'll go back and rewatch after, says Ian. Hi, Ian. What's up? Glad you're here. It's 1:49. I'm going to split here in a minute. I'll hang another 5 or so, but let me clear out some super chats here. Fareed says, what do you think of 12 to 13K single coils? I mean, that sounds really hot to me. I don't, by the way, that is not always the indicator of, output. So I don't really understand the ins and outs of like, I mean, you wind a pickup hotter, that figure goes up. I know that, but it doesn't, for whatever reason, necessarily equate to the way the pickup ends up sounding because of like things like magnet strength and the particular wind and all kinds of stuff. So I'm not a pickup expert, but most single coils that I think of as being like on the borderline of, starting to get quite hot would be 9K, like a hot broadcaster pickup or a P90, like 910. I don't think they really wound them much hotter than that. So 12 to 13, that sounds hot to me. Possibly, I mean, I did have a DiMarzio SDS1 once. Maybe it's those. Is that what could be in that Charvel? Maybe. And its whole thing was it's a super distortion in a single, so it'd be a ceramic magnet and the whole 9 yards. I remember I had one. It was my first aftermarket pickup I ever bought, actually. It was like, it's a DiMarzio. I don't know. I mean, they're supposed to be good, right? So I bought one, stuck it in my Honda. I don't even remember what it sounded like. I probably couldn't tell at the time. Oh, yeah. I love the guitar playing in Iron Maiden so damn much. I do too, man. Great guitar playing, I really like both Dave and Adrian's style. Yannick, I had quit like listening to them by then, so I don't really have a perspective on what his style is. But yeah, Glenn and KK were so tight. Yeah, awesome. Super good. Oh, Michael Nielsen did a demo of the Bogner Snorkeler. I didn't know that. I should check it out. I should. Any more super chats? I don't think so. I think I got them all, didn't I? Yeah, looks like it. So let's see. You guys are talking about Chevy Metal with Shane Hawkins on drums. Yeah, Britt went and sat in with him the other night. There's a video on her Instagram if you want to see it, where Shane's like playing, like he's like double drumming with her on the tom. She's playing Van Halen on drums at the Roxy with Chevy Metal. Yeah, Shane's a great drummer. 17 years old. Pretty crazy. Okay, I'm just looking through the end of the chat here. Does it make difference what speakers you use with these lower wattage amps? I think there's a thing to pushing speakers, there is a thing to that. And, I don't, whatever sounds good is good, but, if you're using a low watt amp, like a 15 watt amp, blues is probably the way to go. If you're going Alico, like why go with the 2 creambacks or whatever? And I think what I noticed with higher wattage speakers, and this definitely won't be across the board all the time, but I noticed they tend to sound kind of darker sometimes. Not necessarily a bad thing. Take the Celestion Redback, great sounding speaker, really nice in a combo. They'll handle 150 watts. It's a fairly dark speaker. It's pleasing sounding, but if you want a true kind of crunchy greenback style top end, which to me isn't super bright, it's just got its little thing, greenback thing that it does. It's sort of similar tone, but it's like it's darker. And to get the speaker moving and pushing it a little bit and all that, I think there's something to that, So I tend to, what was recommended to me by Jim from Scumbag was you want to have double the power rating of what your amp is rated at. So the RMS power, if it's 50 watts, you want to have 4 greenbacks, 100 watt cabinet, and then you're safe, because a 50 watt amp can put out upwards of 70 or 75 watts peak probably, right? So something like that. So if it's healthy and all that, and maybe you're pushing it with a fuzz and like who knows, so you want your speakers to be able to handle that. So that's always a good kind of ratio there. To now, Celestion told me, John at Celestion, I remember he said, you can use our speakers safely at the rating with an amp of that rating. Like you're good with a 25 watt speaker with a 25 watt amp. He told me that. I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I was sort of thinking inside, like, yeah, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to generally use a 50 watt cabinet, at least, 2 25s with a 25 watt amp or whatever, or I'm going to keep the volume just down a little bit. And literally, if you have like a, old school attenuator, like a hot plate or something like that, one click is all it takes to like half the power of the amplifier. like we're, running an attenuator on the second out or something. And, it's almost like adding a second cabinet at that point and, taking some of the heat off the speakers. So you just want to be careful not to obliterate your speakers. That's all. And I think, generally speaking, Steven's saying, how did Brit playing with Chevy metal come about? Well, that's enough about speakers. You understand. Just kind of go with that formula, and it'll always be good, I think. And if you like high power speakers, then EVs, 4 EVs with 100-watt Marshall is 800 watts of speaker handling. Some people like that sound, so it's just a different sound. That's all. Britt playing with Chevy metal. We met Shane at AC/DC. So I went to AC/DC in London this past June, and we were backstage and went to like the hospitality area, where friends and family and stuff like that. And Shane was there at that gig, and so we met him there for a minute, and they exchanged Instagrams, and then she ended up staying in touch with him or whatever, and he invited her to come play because she's a badass drummer. Yep. There's a super there. Joe says, did you see a Baja Fresh in that studio we were talking about? Skip Saylor saw Mike Myers and Laurie from that 70s show there when recording Shrek. Oh, Skip Saylor saw Mike Myers and Laurie from that 70s shows when we were recording Shrek. No, I remember Baja Fresh. Baja Fresh was like, when they first came out, man, that was the shit. Like their fish taco was so good. It was the best fish tacos. And I used to go there all the time. And then they got bought out or something, and it kind of changed, and then it wasn't as cool anymore. But Baja Fresh in the, I used to go to the one on Sunset Boulevard, like right by the Comedy Store and stuff all the time because it was so damn good. Get like cravings for those fish tacos. STS1, the Jake single coil, they're actually pretty cool. Yeah, that's right. They are. The Jake has them in his guitar. Now, in that guitar, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me, 12K or 13K, if that's the Charvel that you're looking at, because they usually use, or a lot of times they'll use a JB in the bridge. And on Jake's guitar, I remember trying and going, oh, this works great in this guitar. The singles are the same volume as the humbucker. It was a great pickup choice for that particular guitar. So that makes sense to me. People tend to use lower output 6K, whatever, maybe 7K single coil, but yeah, 12 or 13K is like, whoa. But in Jake's guitar, for sure, it was really well balanced with the bridge humbucker. So it's interesting. Jake's a smart guy, and he did some interesting things on his guitar. Like the USA model, I think, actually does this, but above the 15th fret or something, the fret size is different. He uses 6100 below a certain point when there's more space, and then a 6105 or whatever, I think, like up higher, so that the frets, because it's not as much, width on the fret. So it just worked better as the distances between the frets get skinnier. Little things like that. And then the SDS ones and the angled singles, to clean up the low end a little bit. It's kind of a bunch of interesting stuff. So interesting cat. Could you talk about the pickups in your Gil Yaron if you have time? They're made by Gil or his wife, I think, and they were wound he's like, yeah, she literally winds up at the kitchen table. I'm not sure if he's still doing the same thing or not now, but they're wonderful sounding, just PAF style pickups. So low wind. Have you ever played the old Ibanez Destroyers from the 80s? A friend of mine had the Phil Collin, which was basically a Destroyer in one of my first bands. So played that, I remember. I remember the red ones, they were kind of cool, candy red. But I've only got my old one now. So it's a very different guitar, I think, than those. Those were, a lot of them were bolt-on neck, I think. They did make set neck ones with the, kind of, 6 on a side headstock that was kind of the Ibanez headstock, and the flame tops. And so they did stuff like that. But the only ones I played were a bolt neck, Phil Collins style. Yeah. Phil used a post-Law Street Destroyer. Yeah, it's actually the Phil Collins model. And they had different, they had cheaper ones, and then they had more like a super deluxe one with block inlays and a set neck and everything, I think. But my friend had the bolt neck one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you guys. Yeah. What song did you most enjoy playing with Cornell? Oh, man. Blow Up the Outside World was always just super great. that, you know, when you kick into the pre-chorus, give you everything I have, give you everything I own. I would just close my eyes and play those chords, and it was him singing, and you know, it was like, oh, this is friggin' great right now. I was always very present when we were playing that song. But there was a bunch, man. Slaves and Bulldozers was always really fun. I got to just beat the hell out of the guitar. Some of the acoustic stuff, Sun Shower, loved. Rusty Cage was always really fun. Sail Hello to Heaven, I loved playing. There's a few deep cuts that we didn't do very much, like Zero Chance. That's the one. Off, Down on the Upside. I love that song. It's so beautiful. It was, I guess Ben Shepherd mainly wrote that. Chris wrote probably the melody and lyrics, but it was a Ben song, and it's very angular and weird, but it also flows and rolls in the way that only Soundgarden could, you know. And we did it maybe 4 or 5 times live, and it was I just loved playing it. It's such a beautiful, melancholy song, so that was great. And then also one I loved doing, and I felt like we did a really, really cool version of it, was Searching with My Good Eye Closed. Because I did the intro. So if you watch, there's video of us in Toronto doing it, and I wanted to do it with the intro, you know, and so I made a track instead of, you know, Soundgarden's. I actually went through and found all the animal sounds online, and I did all the voices, you know. Do you hear a pig or whatever? That, you know, this is a cow. All that stuff is me. So if you go find it online, the devil says, you know. I did all the voiceover for it and found all the animal sounds and did the whole intro with a click and everything so that we could play it to the intro. And I really had fun. I remember doing that in my little studio space, and then we would play it. And for some reason, when Soundgarden did it, this is something I didn't understand. When they came back and they did the never asked Chris this, but when they came back and they did the touring for King Animal and stuff, they played it, but they did it in a weird key. You know, it's originally in B, and they took it all the way up to D, I think, which is like a minor third. And then he shifted the melody. It was just weird to me. It was like, it sounded so much cooler in the original key. And I was always questioning why they did that, why they played it in the, if you'll notice that if you go watch them do it in later years, you know, during, you know, post 2013 or whatever, they played it and it's in a strange key, I thought. Just, and it wasn't really like, it's not like Chris had a hard time singing it or anything. I could never figure out why the key thing, you know. But when we did it in the album key, and it was friggin' cool. It was like, it's just a badass, weird Soundgarden song. It was so cool. So that was really fun. Jesus Christ Pose was always really fun too. Would you consider the neck on your SSC Nags big? On the big side, nice, good neck. You know, it's got a roundness to it, but also just a little bit of taken out of the shoulder, so it's real nice. But it is, yeah, I would say for a Les Paul style neck on the big side, but not that big blocky D thing that Gibson would sometimes do on R8s and R7s and stuff. Not like that. Different feel, very comfortable. I'm sure it was Steve's, you know, it's his neck, so, you know, I'm sure he was very, very careful about it. This is a cow. A rooster says. If you go search Chris Cornell 2009 Toronto, 2009 or 8, Searching with My Good Eye Closed, you'll find it and you can hear the intro tape. Cell phones weren't, you know, as good as they are now back then, so the recordings might sound squirrely, but you can hear the intro playing or whatever, and just know that I had a blast making all that. It was really fun. Anyway, yeah. That was the kind of shit I would do, like, and really enjoy, and then I'd bring it to Chris, and I'd be all proud, you know, and he'd just smile and laugh and be like, "Okay, great, this is cool," you know. And he was always like very, you know, like appreciative of stuff like that. You know, it was just fun. So, yeah, must have been great having a great singer like that next to you on stage. Yeah, surreal. You had to remind yourself sometimes, that's the guy. He's the real guy. You know, I always said we're a cover band, but that we just play with the real guys or whatever, women. Same thing with Melissa Etheridge, or, you know, Melissa's was like a powerhouse, man, like rock star singer. Her voice was always stellar. and just the power and the, you know, and the, I don't know, she could just pour it. I mean, she was amazing. One of the best singers I've ever played with, obviously, you know, and Henley, you know, I mean, when those people go into a tune, you get chills. It's like, that's a voice, man. I grew up with that, you know, and it's a powerful thing. That's what makes our rock and roll world go round. Well, on that note, I think I'm going to go, you guys. I'm going to go find out. It's a little weird they haven't called us about the cats, so it's getting late in the day here, and I do need to get to the studio. So I'm going to go and find out what's going on, and I will see you guys. Okay, so next week, I don't know what's happening next week because I'm traveling. I will be just landing next week. And I wasn't sure if I was going to do the show that night or maybe the following day, you know, try and sign on for a little bit on our setup day, which might be hectic, but we'll see. Just watch for a watch page. I'll make a decision and decide what to do. And I'm sorry that, you know, the travel falls on a Sunday. That's just kind of is what it is, but it'll be like that for the next little while. Just in general, the channel, I mean, as I know that I'm not taking it seriously. I am, and I'm going to figure out ways to, you know, do some, because I'm getting busy going into new year here with sort of more traditional style musical projects that, you know, aren't, you know, my YouTube studio and stuff like that. So I need to find a way to, one thing I'm going to go do this week is go get a new phone. I'm going to get a 16 Pro or whatever and invest in that so that I've got a really great mobile situation for, you know, both streaming and making videos on the fly, because the mic in it is evidently incredible. Did you guys see that on the 16 Pro, the just a little aside, the Michael Bublé thing where he's like, he cut a single singing into the phone, like he's actually using the phone microphone. It's incredible. And then they released the single, you know, it's like, wow. And Greg Wells was a part of that. My friend Greg, great record producer and stuff. And he had something to do with the development and the, you know, R&D on that and stuff, but it's pretty wild. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm sold. I need to invest in a new phone. It's time. I've got an old 13. So, you know, it's served me well, but time for a new one. So anyways, and I'll find ways to do things, you know, be it shorts or be it different types of videos, you know, maybe, you know, 5-minute lessons or like some of the things where I want to keep it fresh and maybe it'll be better, you know, some of the things, but there's going to be certainly some backstage, you know, somebody mentioned maybe doing venue tours like Lee Sklar does or things like that. Just kind of a little bit of, you know, different kind of content. Maybe it's a good thing, you know, maybe the same old, you know, maybe it's time to switch it up and come up with some new, it'll force me into some new zones as far as YouTube goes, and I will take it seriously and make time and stuff and keep the channel, you know, fresh and going and stuff like that, because I love doing this. And then always on Sundays, you know, if I can keep the time, I will, you know, the 11:45 noon thing might need to be later though. On gig days, you guys know I used to do live streams after I'd be done a gig, you know, and I do them backstage for a half hour or 45 or so. That's what I do sometimes when I'm in England, that kind of thing that might happen. So I'll try and put up watch pages early, make it clear and stuff, and just keep things exciting and new and fresh and different. And yeah, all that good stuff. All right, you guys, appreciate you. Hey, Happy New Year to you all. Be safe on New Year's. Everybody take Uber and don't drive and all that stuff, and walk where you're going. And I'm going to do that for sure. And you guys are the best, you know, thanks so much. Always another year. I appreciate you all, you know, for hanging in there, and we're still here. All right, everybody take care.